It's late in December of 2009, and the Gilbert Arenas-led Washington Wizards are currently flying home after a West Coast road trip playing cards to pass the time. Only it was this regular card game that would literally break Gilbert Arenas.
Before you come to the arena, I'm just gonna burn your cards.
Bro, I was like, man, I'll shoot you in your knee.
If you got them cojones, I'll bring you the. I'm pretty sure you can't afford it, and I want to see you
play in an NBA locker room.
A crazy incident that not only ended Gilbert's championship hunt that season,
50 games,
but broke the superstar.
I wish I can take back that it was that day. Right, I'm not even gonna lie. Like, I really hated the world. When I went out, it was the dude with the and the thing. That's all everyone knew. I don't want the legacy of 0. I came back with 9. I put double limo tint on my house windows. I was waking up, throwing up, don't know why. I didn't love it anymore.
But how did we even get here anyway? And why did this stupid mistake end up breaking who was one of the greatest scorers we have ever seen grace the hardwood? Well, to find that out, we have to go back to the 2001 NBA draft. June 27th, 2001, Gilbert Arenas, who had averaged 16.2 points on near 50% shooting during his sophomore season at Arizona, in which the Wildcats had gone all the way to the national championship game, came into this draft as its best scorer, only to drop well below where he thought he was supposed to get picked.
I was so angry on draft day. Oh, because when I came out, I was supposed to have been lottery.
Because even the franchise who shared they would choose him with their 25th pick, the Sacramento Kings, opted to select Gerald Wallace, resulting in Arenas falling all the way into the second round, being chosen 31st by the Golden State Warriors, seeing the Arizona star making a shocking claim.
On my press conference, I said, I don't care about none of this, man. I'll be starting by the middle of the season. Hook up on them motherfuckers, man.
So why did he fall anyway?
Gilbert is doing these tests in Chuck Taylor's and doing them more half-assed than you can ever imagine. We are on the precipice of our dreams, of the things that like 0.01% of people get to experience. And Gilbert is like, I'm not doing this treadmill test. Y'all gonna mess up my Chuck Taylors.
Well, actually, the real issue was in Gilbert's build, because standing around 6'3", Arenas was more suited to playing point guard, but given the incredible scoring talents he showcased at Arizona, many teams simply viewed him as an undersized shooting guard. To make matters worse, once he finally arrived onto his NBA squad, the former Wildcat ran into even more issues, as not only was he stuck behind 2 other guards in Mookie Blaylock and Larry Hughes, but Arenas began to develop some serious self-doubt as he sat on the bench, stacking up did not plays.
My first game, we playing against Vince Carter. I'm in there cocky. Man, he's trash, man. The TV make these players look better than they really are. And he missed like 2 straight shots. So I'm already trash. I knew he was trash. And then he got mad and then got in the post spin move and cocked it. Oh, boom, right? I jumped out the seat. Oh my God, I'm on the court. Joe, y'all see that? And then I had to realize I was in the NBA. Oh, my bad. But what ended up happening was reality kicked in because I'm like, he just did that to Jason Richardson. And Jason Richardson, athleticism is, huh. And then it's like, I just seen somebody who go, huh. And I'm here, and I'm like, oh man, I can't even play in this league, bruh. And I got so depressed just from the dunk. I don't have this type of athleticism. So I spent probably the first part of the season, like, I can't do this. Just Kobe, I can't even guard him. Ray Allen, I can't even guard. Like these people, I can't even. And I was doing that to myself.
However, after a shock move by the Golden State Warriors, who fired their head coach, Dave Cowens, and appointed Brian Winters as their interim leader, saw Gilbert finally receive an opportunity to actually find out if he really could compete in the league.
And then he was like, yo, just play your style.
Combine this with Mookie disappearing and Hughes suffering an injury, Gil, exactly as he had predicted, became a starter mid-season against the San Antonio Spurs. To make things even better for Arenas, after averaging 13.3 points plus 4.3 assists and 1.6 steals in his first 11 games as a starter, the rookie would receive some vital advice that would change everything.
And someone said, yo, why you keep looking at them for what you can't do? Won't you start looking at what they can't do? You have speed, you can shoot, you can score. Now look at the game like that. Can those players stop what you do?
Tips that were on full display throughout their March 21st battle against state rival, the Los Angeles Clippers.
What a nice finish by Arenas. Overtime. Clock at 7, Arenas ripped it in.
As Arenas would round out this matchup having scored an insane 32 points on 73% shooting before rounding out the Warriors' tragic losing field season with a 13.7 point average. Yet Gilbert Arenas wasn't satisfied with 14 points a night and losing. So the incoming sophomore began to study the greats.
So I got a call, hey, what is Kobe doing over there? Oh yeah, he waking up at 3, at the gym at 3 o'clock. No, he ain't. Yeah, he is. I take a cab. Let's go. Let me see. Sitting there. Oh, he here.
Wow.
Oh, he really here. Yeah. So you see him now I get to watch him how he works. Let me see how he works.
Yeah.
Okay, he's in a full swing. He going through a full game live, battling, getting hit, going. Like, okay, this motherfucker's intent. And then come out in a game, get you 30-something. Like doing the same move 300 times, 400 times.
However, while it was Bryant who showed how hard you actually had to work to become a 3-time champion, it was actually Warriors legend Chris Mullin who taught his young guard the secret to truly becoming an elite NBA player.
Chris Mullin is the one who honed it in. When I found out what Kobe did, I just stayed in. I was sleeping in the gym. I just stayed there. And then he had to teach me how to confine it. Going 70% for 5 hours that's stupid. Go 110 for 40 minutes. Do it, go home, rest. 3 hours, 4 hours, come back. Go home, rest, then come back. Instead of just sitting here and saying you worked out for 7 hours because it has to translate. And I didn't understand what he was talking about. What do you mean
Game
translate?
speed, everything.
Yeah, and he said, you can shoot 1,000 shots, practice style. What about the game style? So if you're sitting here going 70% and the game is 110% depending on who you're playing against, what type of players playing against you, that's not going to translate. You're still going to be a sorry shooter. You have to try to bring in a real element.
But could Gilbert Arenas, even with a full offseason of work under his belt, truly succeed in the league as an undersized shooting guard? With the true departure of Mookie Blaylock and playing under a new head coach in Eric Musselman, Gilbert Arenas had become his squad's full-time starting point guard. Yet, with the Warriors once again struggling to win, recording just a single W throughout their first 7 battles, Gil was desperate to turn this around in their mid-November matchup against the Memphis Grizzlies.
Gilbert along 2.
However, it wasn't in the scoring column where Arenas did his damage. No.
And Arenas with the steal. Gilbert looking to push, kind of a delayed break. Dropping to Jamison, in and out of his hands and up and in.
Keystan, who really bothered Jamison.
Arenas down the lane to dip, here for the dunk.
Because as the final buzzer rang out, it was the former 31st pick's 15 assists that had made Golden State victorious. To make things even better for the second-year guard, Gil was just happy to be in the NBA itself.
I was a fan first, and I was just a fan who got a chance to live out his dream, right? So when I'm in the NBA, I was a fanboy. Everybody, okay, let me get your jersey. Sign your autograph. I collected 550 goddamn jerseys while I was a player. Because I was a fan who was playing, right? I just had a skill and I was great at that skill.
Yet, these were about the only positives all season for the Warriors. Golden State, despite their combo guards' best efforts, such as 41 points against Michael Jordan and his Washington Wizards, it just wasn't good enough to push the Warriors into the postseason. However, after being crowned as the league's most improved player, Gilbert was ready to make a shocking move, one that would literally change the NBA forever. Because the Warriors, even though they had drafted Gilbert, due to him being selected in the second round, Golden State was unable to match the amount of money other teams were offering their unrestricted free agent, leaving Arenas free to go wherever he chose.
Well, I'm flipping a coin between Clippers and, DC, and I think it landed on Clippers 8 times, and I was like, I'm just gonna go opposite. I was going to Washington, right? Because, there was things he said. There was no franchise guy here. There's no face of the city. You can be the face of the city. I'm gonna push you. Just in his words to me was, just get me out of this Jordan era, and you're my guy.
Resulting in Gil signing with the Washington Wizards on a 6-year, $60 million deal, seeing the league implementing the Arenas provision, which basically means teams can better retain their second-round picks in free agency. I don't actually understand all the details, but was Gilbert Arenas really good enough to carry the Washington Wizards out of their bumpy 2-year Michael Jordan era? Well, Gil, who upon arrival into the nation's capital would receive a unique nickname.
So I had MySpace, and my name was Black President 01. And then how you had the top 8? I had someone rig it where I had like top 50, all girls. And then it says Secret Service. So somebody was like, oh, you're like an agent. You're like an Agent Zero. And I was like, I like it.
Continued to don his signature number 0, a number chosen to constantly remind Arenas just how many people believed he would ever succeed.
This year is going to be very exciting. I can prove it, and I'm going to do it. We're going to make the playoffs. I'm going to work hard. My team is going to work hard. They've been here. They've been showing it. And we're going to do whatever it takes to make the playoffs.
So, having made a clear promise to Washington fans, Agent Zero continued to work obsessively.
I'm in the gym 9 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, 6 at night, 10 at night, 3 in the morning, learning the floor. Like, I'll make the owner put the floor down. I want to know the dead spots because of ice. Like, I really was doing all that. Where did the cold breeze come from?
Resulting in the rising star opening his Wizards career with a triple-double against the Dallas Mavericks early in the 2003-2004 season before tearing the NBA to shreds with multiple 30-plus point games, including 35 against Kobe Bryant. However, despite all these incredible performances, thanks to Gilbert missing 27 games due to an abdominal strain and the squad still hungover from the Jordan era, plus learning new head coach Eddie Jordan's systems, not even Arenas' 19.6 point, 5 assist, and 1.9 steal averages could propel Washington into the postseason. But having finished this year 25-57, far from even the 8th seed, could Gilbert Arenas really achieve his lofty goal? Agent Zero, who had also been dubbed Hibachi,
I was hitting a couple shots and then I shot it and I was like, Hibachi, and it went in. And the guy turned about, what? You just got hibachi'd. You just got burned.
began the season averaging 21.6 points, 5.5 assists, and 1.8 steals, guiding his squad to a hugely improved 12-8 record, and was ready to add to their win column here tonight against the man who had taught him what real hard work looked like. Yet, as the clock was nearing triple zeros in the final quarter, Arenas' 35-point night wasn't enough, and it was once again down to Agent Zero to save his squad.
3 seconds, 2 seconds, Arenas pull-up jumper over Kobe, it's overtime!
While Gil had failed in regulation, with his Wizards sneaking out a W here, they were now preparing to face off against the defending NBA champion to round out 2004, and in almost the exact same fashion as their battle versus LA, 34 points in regulation from Hibachi just wasn't enough, and the game-saving play was placed into Gilbert Arenas' hands.
Arenas, no call, lost it.
A disappointing miss that didn't just see Washington lose this game, but Gilbert Arenas turning that grill up to a whole nother level, resulting in something incredible happening. Gilbert Arenas was named as an NBA All-Star, but upon returning from his first All-Star night, the former Warrior just kept cooking, resulting in Arenas finally living up to his playoff promise and setting up his Wizards for a first-round battle against the Chicago Bulls, a series that most assumed Washington would win with ease. However, as the final buzzer rang out in Game 2, despite a shocking 39-point night from Gilbert, it was the Bulls who held the commanding 2-0 lead. So was this the end of Arenas' insane 2004-2005 season, or would Hibachi be able to claw his way out and bring his squad into the second round? Game 5. With 5.2 seconds remaining here tonight and the scores tied, it appeared as if the Chicago Bulls had finally swung the momentum back in their favor, as thanks to 32 points in Game 3 and 23 in Game 4, Gilbert had incredibly brought his squad back into the series and was blessed with the final play here tonight in Game 5 to grab that vital 3-2 lead. But Wizards head coach Eddie Jordan had drawn the game-saving play up for Larry Hughes, not Gilbert, or so he thought.
I'm gonna win the game. That's what I do.
Arenas, played by Heinrich. Both teams over the limit. Here's Arenas. This for the win. Yes! It's over!
We celebrate in the locker room. I walk over there to him. I'm like, yo, man, how'd you know to go to the left and not give the ball to Larry? And this man, with all seriousness, looked at me in my eyes and said, Larry's supposed to get the ball?
That's a Gil answer.
I said, what do you mean? Yeah. He said, I just watched the play to the moment that I knew where I was going to get the ball, and I just started figuring out how I was going to get my shot. I said, dog, you weren't even shooting well. He said, I knew I was going to shoot that one.
An amazing game winner that gave Washington the momentum the franchise needed to secure their first playoff series victory since 1982 and set themselves up for a second-round matchup against the league's newest dynamic duo, the Dwayne Wade and Shaquille O'Neal-led Miami Heat. A pairing that, even with Agent Zero averaging 24.5 points, 5.8 assists, and 2.8 steals, who were simply too great to overcome, resulting in the Wizards being swept out of the postseason. However, despite this tragic failure, Washington was excited at what they had built and were clearly a squad who could be very dangerous in the Eastern Conference, resulting in their team setting a very clear goal: the Larry O'Brien Trophy. But could they really get out of the Eastern Conference? Or would they simply just forever be a fringe playoff team who got eliminated early in the playoffs year after year after year? April 22nd, 2006. After yet another season of Hibachi cooking the entire NBA, something that was only made more potent by the fact he was snubbed from the Eastern Conference All-Star squad.
And I was so hurt that I got snubbed. And then when they put me in for Jermaine O'Neal because he was hurt, I said, when this All-Star is over with, I'm going to be the East Coast assassin. If you voted against me, I don't care what your game plan is. I'm busting your ass.
That saw Agent Zero drop 40 points or more 11 times and a minimum of 30 points or more 30 times. Thanks to their 42-40 record, Washington was set to face the 4-seeded LeBron James-led Cleveland Cavaliers in the first round of the 2006 playoffs, a series that most assumed Cleveland, led by who was dubbed the Chosen One, who was playing in his very first postseason, would win. Yet, sort of like the Death Star, the Cavaliers had a minor weakness against Agent Zero.
Larry Hughes is second team, first team. I got to work against him every single day. So once he left, it became, the swag is up. When we played him in the playoffs, hey, bro, you about to get work. You know that, right? I already know your defense. I got a whole new offense.
But despite being guarded by the man he once practiced against every single day, Larry Hughes, Arenas' 26-point night on abysmal shooting, 35% from the field and 14% from 3 in Game 1, tragically saw his Wizards going down 1-0. However, Gilbert Arenas, hell-bent on hoisting the Larry O'Brien trophy, wasn't going to go down without a massive fight, coming out in Game 2 and pouring in 30 points, throwing 6 assists whilst recording 4 steals, combined with the fact that the Wizards had held LeBron to 28% from the field and forced the young star into 10 turnovers that had seen Washington incredibly tie the series. Yet, was this game merely a fluke? Could Gil really lead his Wizards not only to a 2-1 lead in Game 3, but a series victory? Gilbert Arenas, desperate to advance past LeBron, has just poured in 34 points. But with less than 20 seconds remaining and up 1, the Cavaliers had the final chance to steal away the Game 3 W.
James has Daniels, can go up over him if he wants. Fakes right, goes left, bends in, over Ruffin. He got it to go! Timeout Washington!
Hughes knows everything about Arenas. Going back to their teammate days. Quickly to Jeffries. They'll get it back to Arenas. Here's a 3! Off the rim, no good. Still alive. And rebounded by Varejao as the clock runs out.
A tragic failure that, despite yet another 34-piece from Arenas in Game 4 that saw his franchise tying the series once again, that was seemingly about to repeat itself here tonight in Game 5. Because even with Agent Zero pouring in 42 points, it was Washington down by 1 here in overtime with what could be the final possession of this must-win game.
Arenas makes his move, foul.
So with Gil knocking down both of his clutch free throws and placing his Wizards up 1, was the 3-2 lead his, or would it slip right through his fingertips? But despite James saving his franchise for the second time in this first round series, throughout the win or go home Game 6, Gilbert just continued his heroics.
Looking to inbound, Arenas puts up the 3.
And was presented with the opportunity to ice the game and tie the series at the free throw line. Only LeBron, after Arenas missed his first free throw, would remind him of a key fact.
He said, if you miss these free throws, you know who's going to win it.
However, James wasn't referring to himself. No.
We're gambling during the series. Playing Blu-ray. Me, Damon Jones, Larry Hughes, like beating the out of Damon Jones. During shoot around or something, I'll just yell, the landlord is here. The landlord is here. I want my rent money, right? And I'll tell a coach, hey, that man owes me money, coach. You put him in 1-4 flat. I'm gonna destroy him. So they stopped playing Damon Jones, like Game 4, Game 5, right? He's not really getting any minutes, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm just laughing at him, like, yeah, I got you. During Game 6, we make a comeback, playing well, and I hit the shot to get us to overtime. We're up 1, I got the 2 free throws, and that's when LeBron tackles you. He's talking about Damon Jones. Like, if you miss this, Damon Jones getting subbed in. And then I see the taking the shit off. Like, get the out of here. They're not putting Damon Jones. Who's put Damon Jones in? And I'm like, there's no way you're not getting the ball. Like, no one, LeBron James not passing the ball to a dude who ain't played 2 games, ain't played this game, no way.
Arenas misses both in his hands. Hughes, Damon Jones puts it in! And the Cleveland Cavaliers advance to the second round.
So, having once again been eliminated far from his NBA Finals goals, many began to question if Gilbert Arenas truly was capable of being that guy for the Washington Wizards, as well as wondering if he was simply just an empty stat player on a subpar team. But would he even get the opportunity to prove them all wrong? Devastated from his round 1 failure, Gilbert did what he had always done, worked.
During the season, like if you did a move, like bop, bop, bop. We're down, I go back and look at that time when you did, that's what I used to watch the time, point it to the director, write that down. Here, write down the time, I go back, look at that move, and I'm like, all right, the D Miles, right? And then I just have this whole book, the Crawford, all boom, boom, boom. So at the end of the season, I got this big blue book full of all these moves. And then in the summer, I'm working on them. So it's like I'm crafting all my talent around all NBA players.
Whilst also retaining the mindset his father, Gilbert Arenas Sr., had helped him to develop.
And I remember asking him, I said, Dad, now that you're retired from acting, what was your biggest thing in Hollywood? And he said, you. He was like, I came to Hollywood to be a star. You was the star that I came to Hollywood to be. I failed, you succeeded. My failures didn't lead to me succeeding, it led to you succeeding. Because whatever I went through, you seen, you understood, keep going. They shut this door, climb over the door.
Combine this with the fact that Hibachi had been snubbed from the bronze medal winning 2006 Team USA FIBA World Cup squad.
Anybody that coached on Team USA, he was on his hit list.
Arenas entered the 2006-2007 season with one thing on his mind: vengeance. Beginning his revenge tour by pouring in 45 points on the Cleveland Cavaliers' heads, which included dropping LeBron James.
Arenas spinning as LeBron fell down, and Arenas hits it.
And winning this game before arriving into Staples Center a month later, about to truly break the NBA.
Watch how bad I cross Kobe up. I'm gonna yank him.
Played to the hands, didn't really push the issue. Gilbert Arenas doesn't need much space, does he? Would.
Caught in the air, found Gilbert Arenas, and he'll go to the line as Kobe. Got him on the way by, they say.
But in seemingly the same fashion as his 2006 playoff journey, 44 regulation points just wasn't enough. Therefore, Hibachi just kept cooking throughout overtime.
It's Arenas for three. Boy, what a night for Gilbert. Gilbert Arenas to 58 points.
A career-high 60-point game.
When I scored 60, I was like, I just scored 60 on Kobe Bryant. The coach was like, and we won.
We won too.
Hey, I just scored 60 on Kobe Bryant. Like, what? Win. But that is the win. That's history.
That pushed Gilbert into a category only 3 people to that point were in: Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, and Agent Zero, the only 3 players to score 60 points at Staples Center. However, just 5 days after this epic performance saw the arrival of a game Gilbert had circled on his calendar since his removal from Team USA's World Cup squad. You see, because Team USA's head coach Mike Krzyzewski coached the Duke Blue Devils, the only way Hibachi could exact revenge was against his assistants, such as the Phoenix Suns head coach Mike D'Antoni, who had led his squad into this game on a 15-game winning streak.
He said, hey, Arenas, you're going to need more than 50 to beat us. And I said, oh, don't worry about that. I will have more than 50 to beat you.
Gilbert for the long jumper. How do you like that? Plenty of time.
Arenas bumped by Marion.
What
still
concentration.
Scores. In Denver. Here's Arenas. Gilbert drives on Marion, draws a foul, and he scores! How do you like that? He is spectacular!
Agent Zero, after ripping the Suns' defense to shreds throughout regulation, was gifted an extra 5 minutes to make good on his promise to D'Antoni pre-game.
Gilbert fires. Too strong. He got it off the glass! He got it off the glass!
Which, after Arenas dropped 54 points and snapped the Suns' win streak, is exactly what he had done. The Wizard star then went on to average 34 points throughout December while still throwing 6.2 assists a night. And with the arrival of the new year, Gil just kept doing insane things.
Arenas checks the clock. Gilbert for the win.
Oh, baby!
Because against the Utah Jazz, desperate for yet another victory, Coach Eddie Jordan was drawing up a winning play, which of course Arenas had a better play in mind.
And Gil's sitting over here. He's like, man, I don't give a damn what coach draw up. You know what I'm about to do. 1-4 flat. Y'all get the hell out the way.
With 5, down to 4. Takes a glance with 3 to 2 for the winner.
This turned around. He turned his back and walked off. Started talking to people. He ain't looked back to make sure. He just waited on the crowd. Like, that's some of the most beautifully arrogant, put together. Because
it was just like.
And guess what? After dropping 40 points on the Seattle Supersonics heads in March, he did something even more disrespectful.
And the hibachi iron strike. Arenas drives, puts it up, he scores at the buzzer! Wow. Gilbert Arenas hits the game winner for Washington!
And then hit the game winner, and then basically took my jersey off and set it against the fan, laid it in the middle. I'm here. I'm here, baby. I'm here. Laid it down. Had the G-Unit wife beat on and everything.
So, having gotten revenge against everyone who doubted him, there was one final hit on Agent Zero's hit list: the Cleveland Cavaliers, a franchise that the Wizards, as their season was nearing its end, were on a collision course with for another first-round matchup until
East Division. Gerald Wallace, unbelievable, as he's able to finish, and Gilbert Arenas on the floor. And Arenas still down.
Tragically, Gilbert Arenas has just been ruled out for the remainder of the 2006-2007 season, forcing him to watch his Washington franchise get swept from the sidelines whilst recovering from knee surgery. However, despite this tragedy, Gil approached rehab the same way he had approached skill development, and thanks to this manic intensity, the now 3-time All-Star was incredibly available to play on opening night for the Wizards' 2007-2008 season, a shockingly quick recovery, which, despite some feeling it was rushed, with Arenas pouring in 34 points on opening night and doing this
for Gilbert. Fakes, takes the jumper, got it! Gilbert Arenas!
Quelled any doubts almost immediately. Yet, just 8 games into this young season, tragedy struck Arenas once again.
Well, first it was a PCL, MCL strain, and then they told me I'd be back by training camp, so all right. 8 games later, 8 games into the season, meniscus tear and microfracture.
But in the exact same fashion as his offseason, Hibachi attacked his recovery relentlessly, allowing the All-NBA guard to return towards the end of this season, granting Gil the opportunity he had missed in their last campaign to avenge their 2006 Round 1 failure against the LeBron James-led Cleveland Cavaliers. Only tragedy would strike yet again as Washington was nearing revenge.
LeBron, big ass ran into my wrist, and I couldn't. So they gave me a Toradol shot so I could feel, and I think it felt like I hyperextended it.
Not only had the Wizards failed at the hands of James and his Cavs for the 3rd season in a row, but Gilbert was presented with the devastating reality that his high-speed playstyle would be forced to change forever.
I don't know that doctor's name because he told me you would never be the same player again. What does that mean? Trust me, when you're going into the game and you see a lane open, and I'm a 1-foot jumper, and now I gotta go in there and try to jump off 2, and I'm at a 2-foot jumper that can dunk, right? The game changes.
Yet, before Gil could even attempt to play differently, the Wizard star opted to sit out the majority of the following 2008-2009 season.
So when I went to the summer, we just cleaned it out, And that clean out took me out the whole season.
In order to complete a full recovery and prepare for a playoff ascent in the 2009-2010 season, a decision that was seemingly genius, as on opening night, Arenas' 29-point in their victory against the Dallas Mavericks, then his 32-point night against the New Jersey Nets just 2 games later, before showcasing he could still stuff a stat sheet with his 45-point and 13-assist game against his former franchise, made it appear that Agent Zero had truly returned. However, as Washington was fighting to make it back to the postseason, something life-altering happened towards the end of 2009.
And then he was like, man, I'll shoot. Oh. The competitive kicks in there. Oh, yeah. I got to see this. I got to see this. I'll bring them for you. I want to see you do this. Oh. But just in case I'm going, I'm not gonna have no bullets, and you're gonna have to go get your own bullets.
Gunplay in an NBA locker room? That's what the New York Post is reporting. Citing an anonymous source, the newspaper reports Washington Wizards teammates Gilbert Arenas and Javaris Crittenton drew guns on each other during a Christmas Eve argument over a gambling debt.
An incident which resulted in Gilbert Arenas being suspended for 50 games.
When I got suspended, you know, and we had the meeting with Stern, and he was like, so I'm thinking about 50 games. Like, what? 50 games? Yeah, so what we're gonna do is 50 games, and if you try to fight or appeal it, he said, you just lost your Adidas deal. Yeah. I'm gonna go after your NBA contract. I wish I can take back that it was that day, because who he was at that time, a young kid trying to figure out how to be a pro. Like when we talk about young kids trying to be pros, he was the only young player that actually wanted to learn how to be one. That moment, I took that away from him.
An event that saw Gil enter a state of deep depression.
It really hurt because, you know, back then, you know, you're reading like, you're seeing your name in malice. Right? Oh, you know, this is an evil dude.
Me, I was ashamed and I was embarrassed of what happened, and like, then you guys believed in me and you guys had me here, and I let you guys down. I don't want to be seen. I don't Zero. I don't want the legacy of Zero, that jersey, to have that on. So that next year I came back with 9.
To read that this is what it was and who you was, it really was a toll on me. Right? I'm not even gonna lie. Like, I really hated the world.
Gilbert was so broken by the events that after his suspension had ended, he flat out refused to show up to the Wizards training facility until the 2010-2011 season media day. However, it was upon entering their facility in which the Wizards' 2010 #1 draft choice, John Wall, would begin to slowly change Arenas' view of the world.
He turned and, oh, Gilbert, hey man, oh my, I'm glad I'm your teammate. And I'm like, you know how like you're one of those tough guys. You're like, what is this? Is this love? Is this a hug? This is not what we do. He just hugged the shield that I built. His energy, and I'm like, yo, he's me. Whatever you need, clothes, shoes, advice, come to me. I'll give it to you. There's no beef here.
Yet, with Washington opting to move on from their former 3-time All-Star, trading him away to the Orlando Magic, Gil's issues only got worse.
Go to Orlando thinking I'm about to get a fresh start. You got your BM in the paper. You get served on national TV. When I was in Orlando, I threw up every single day.
What were you saying?
Yeah, I was waking up, throwing up, don't know why. Just coming in there and just...
Anxiety.
I put double tinted limo tint on my house windows that I was renting, so nobody knew that I lived there. I didn't want to see people. I just wanted to go in the arena and leave.
To make things even more tragic, after an up and down season with the Magic, Gilbert's arrival onto the Memphis Grizzlies saw him reconsidering even playing basketball altogether.
Like, that's what I said, when people think I was boycotted, or what do they call it? Blackballed. No, I quit. I didn't love it anymore.
Gilbert Arenas, a man once filled with infectious joy, was done.
Think about how joyful I was when I was there. That I can go up and, hey, can you sign this for me? Sign. So this sat in storage. I didn't want no parts of it. Leave it. That's not my life anymore. I'm a regular dude. No, I'm regular, right? I'm a regular dude. I don't go out. I don't want to be, because when I went out, it was, hey, the dude with the gun and the thing. That's all everyone knew.
However, 2 conversations 3 years later in 2015 would change Gilbert Arenas' life forever.
His name is Ace now. Oh. And when I seen it, and he was all in smiles, like, oh my God, you're one of my favorite players. And just seeing, like, hearing and reading what happened, it didn't match his attitude. Because he lost one was a twin. He was a twin, so he lost his twin sister in that. And then I was like, man,
I want to be a big brother to him. He hit me and he said, man, you know, they're so unfair. They don't know everything you did for people. I heard your comment when I said, man, you know, you can do 99 things right. You do one thing wrong and everybody remembers the negative thing. And he's like, no, dude, I remember the 99. My family remembers the 99. My friends remember the 99. Yeah. We don't remember the one. And when he told me that, it kind of lifted off this dark cloud that I had over me. Yeah. And then overnight, I became me again.
Gilbert, thanks to what Ace had told him, finally felt comfortable again emerging from his shell. But the love for the sport, which once brought him so much joy, was still absent. However, one day, sitting on the couch doing nothing at all in April of 2015, Gil would receive a phone call that would truly change everything.
John Wall hits me like, man, I'm going to the playoffs, man. And he said, since you watch every game, what should I work on? And I was, oh yeah, you know, here, let me go get my notes that I've been writing. What the fucking watch shit? Like, the fuck is there record? Fucking like, all right, so I had to
motherfuckers in the playoffs?
So I had to like Google, all right, okay, he's been doing this, assist went up, shooting went down, right? Now I'm watching highlights and seeing, then I gotta give him this summary of something I've never watched before. Yeah. Right? And then he was like, all right, man, just, you know, watch tonight's game and then, you know, give me the feedback. And then he asked me for the help, then I'm sitting there. They're going against the Raptors, I think. And then I just instantly became a fan. And then I went in, found my Obama chair that's been in storage, blew it off, wiped it down, put it there, and sit in front of my Obama wizard chair that he sat in. And I'm cheering, and now I'm going on Instagram, like, Toronto, you suck, your Raptors is horrible. Like, now I'm just being this troll of a fan, all because John Wall told me, what do you think about my game? And then all of a sudden, I'm a basketball fan again.
A conversation that ripped Gil out of his shell and straight back into the mode he had been in throughout his career.
Feeling wanted.
Being of service.
Being of service, yeah. You know, so him coming back and asking for help, and then, you know, from there, like LeBron was hitting me, you know, Kevin Durant, you know, Booker, like, you know, all these guys was, you know, asking for feedback, you know, and it was just like, oh shit. I wasn't I wasn't a failure in y'all eyes. Okay, I can stick my head out. Okay, cool.
Now understanding that those closest to him remembered Gilbert Arenas for who he was as a human being, not his mistakes, and that even the game's greatest current stars valued his IQ, Arenas truly fell back in love with basketball and life. Speaking of Agent Zero, did you know that his rival, Kobe Bryant, had one of the most epic 3-year scoring runs in the history of the NBA? To find out more about how Bryant dropped 81 points, hit multiple game winners in a single game, and what made him one of the deadliest scorers to ever lace him up, click the video on your screen right now.